guys, I'm so excited to welcome you here to celebrate World Kombucha Day 2024.
World Kombucha Day!
Yeah. Well, let's introduce everybody to who you are. So, Janine and Sarah, why don't you go ahead and share a little bit about Buchi?
All right.
God, where do we start?
Yeah,
where do we start? Story. Yeah,
start like at the beginning.
Yes, begin at the beginning.
Where the story always starts.
Yes. Well, Sarah and I met back in 2008 at our kids' homeschool co-op. We didn't know each other prior to this, but both of us had been brewing kombucha for a few years prior to meeting, just at home, sharing with our family and friends. And I had just moved to Asheville, and had been in the area for a couple of months and, wasn't working. So I decided I'm just going to brew a little more kombucha and sell at the farmer's market. And then quickly met Sarah, who thought that was a great idea and thought about starting a business with another mom already. And so we just decided to team up. So that was in like September of 2008. And, that was the birth. And we, very small, like I'd gotten my kitchen scheduled to have it inspected to make sure that it was okay to make it in my home and sell it at the farmer's market. And Sarah had come over the next day, baby on back, and her 5-year-old and my 6-year-old played while we cleaned the kitchen, ready for the inspection, and passed it. And then just kind of took off from there. We started with 5 gallons. And we got it
magical gallons.
Yes. We got up to 30 gallons before it was like, okay, we got to move somewhere else.
So I'd like to actually go just slightly farther back. What was your first experience with kombucha at all? How did you meet this beautiful culture?
Yes. You want to go first?
Sure. So my first experience, kind of the beginning of that, started when I had my first daughter at 24. My neighbor made me a wonderful dish out of the Nourishing Traditions Cookbook. It was, or at least inspired by that cookbook, and it was raw grated buffalo liver with rice.
Wow.
And so in eating that and getting introduced to that cookbook, I quickly dove in as a new mother, wanting to learn how to cook, to me, what I considered healthier food for my new baby once my baby got to that age, and for myself, while I was nursing. I really just started to explore that cookbook, and it took me until that little one was probably about 3.5, maybe even almost 4, about 3 actually, to try the kombucha recipe. I was doing all other ferments out of that book from, krauts and kvasses and, this, that, and the other, but I just never, for some reason, got around to the kombucha. We were making wine and beer. And as my daughter reached an age of wanting her own beverage, that's really what inspired making it the first time. And that was the first time I had kombucha. I really hadn't gone out. I hadn't really bought it at the stores. Maybe I had tasted somebody else's, but I don't really remember that. I just remember deciding to make it for her. So she had her own fermented drink and we loved it. And so I just kept making more.
Was it love at first sip then? Or was it like...
Oh yeah, we were making meads and wines, and I loved vinegars and sauerkraut. So it was like, kind of like, this is amazing. Why haven't I done this sooner? Why did it take so long? Yeah. So that's kind of for me. I don't remember tasting a commercial brand kind of before that, and maybe tasted other people's, but I don't recall.
For me, I went to a class. I had met a neighbor. My son was 2, and kind of the same idea. Like I wanted to shift my eating to what I thought was more healthy. And my neighbor had introduced me to Nourishing Traditions and that cookbook. And there was a class actually in the town that I lived in that was on that, fermented foods and soaking grains and all of the things that, more traditional cultures did to their food to have healthy bodies. And actually, and for them, it wasn't necessarily in the traditional cultures. It was because, that is how they preserve their food. And it just happened to be really good for them. And, our bodies evolved with that, and having many living organisms in our bodies that work in synergy with our own cells. So, but went to this class and we had a lunch together, and they served kombucha. So it was just in a pitcher. I didn't see any of the SCOBY or anything at that moment, but just tasted it and absolutely loved it the first time I tried it. And at that conference, they had little jars, like little 8-ounce jars with tiny SCOBYs and like 3 lines of instructions about how to make your own kombucha. So I took that home and made it like the next day. And I was so amazed when it actually worked. It had this beautiful SCOBY on top and just loved it, and, you know, shared it immediately with my family and they loved it. Now, all of my friends at the time, they thought it was very weird. Didn't have the same first love that I had. So I kind of secretly kept brewing my kombucha and shared it, you know,
Secretly.
intermittently with friends that I thought might be open to it. But it was when I moved to Asheville that it was like, everybody loved it. Everybody loved my particular way, you know, culture that I had developed, and, you know, said, this is better than what's in the store. But me too, like I hadn't tasted a commercial version until a couple of years after making it myself.
Wow, I love these stories. These are fantastic. And Zane, what was your first meeting with kombucha like?
It wasn't as thoughtful and connected to beautiful children. It was because I was coming out of a point in my life and I thought I would want to try to be a raw vegan and just try on a new outfit, as it were, of like food. And I'm really obsessed with longevity and what does it mean to be there. And I had recently met David Wolf and old people in the, well, I should say old, let's say pioneers and the raw food movement in the US. And so it was just something that I wanted to try. And it seemed like, and it, you know, it smelled like foot and tasted horrible when I first tried it. Was
it a commercial brand or was it someone's homebrew? What were you trying?
I can't remember. It was someone's homebrew, I think. And
Good answer.
It wasn't ours. It wasn't ours.
It wasn't us.
no. This is before me moving to Asheville, but yeah.
Yeah, you were still in Florida at that time.
I was. I was still in the big palm. And one of the things that was interesting, though, is that individuals who were like deeply connected into fermentation also planted this wonderful seed within myself around like, how can you be most deeply connected to the earth, right? Like, what does that, like, what are you doing? And so it was a point of like a lot of some people think I had to break down. I think I had to break through. And so that was a catalytic part of my life was trying kombucha and just a little bit different way of thinking about food.
Well, it's so interesting. It has completely transformed all of our lives. And at some point, Janine and Sarah, you both met Zane, and what kind of magic alchemy happened then? Zane, do you want to share that story?
Well, I can just share from my world, right? Like what I experienced. And I was working with a water company, helping consult in that way. And I had just arrived to Asheville. I really wanted to move to Asheville because I wanted to build connective relationships that pulled me into a deeper sense of community and more in alignment with who I really wanted to be and who I am. And it was a breath of fresh air coming into a place that isn't made for coming in and getting a job. You really had to kind of arrive with an idea. And working through water, and the individual I was working with, she was like, hey, I met these two hippie mamas and they're trying to make this thing called, that she couldn't pronounce kombucha properly, bless her. And I was like, ooh, I know what that is. And just having just interacted with it in a very like plebeian kind of way, I met them, and for me it was love at first sight because I met them at the right off of Riverside Drive, in Friends of Honeybees and Blue Moon Water was in that space, and they walked in, and you know, you can always tell an energetic footprint in my world, and I always feel like if you attune yourself to a vibration that feels with who and where you want to be and what you want to do, it kind of like comes into a full attraction into your life. And so I just saw them and I was like, oh my goodness, their souls were just like, we just want to be in this thing together. We just believe that humans can figure out how to do this thing. And for me, it was a pretty intense connection from like, you know, we spent time together and we're talking, and I can't even use the right words to, because it was just an energetic that just resonated and felt right. And even though it sounds like woo, you know, we're creatures that kind of move to things we like, right?
I think of it as microbial force fields, right? Like maybe
Right.
our bacteria were bringing us together. And I feel like kombucha has wrought many synchronicities in my life. So Sarah and Janine, what was your experience in meeting with Zane? How did this become a magic triangle here?
It really was magical. Like Zane said, like I really think, we walked in as two really naive and innocent and clueless in some ways, in a sweet way, to that meeting. And he just, blew us away with what he showed us of what the brand can be. And I think, that he blows people away all the time in the ways that he can see the future and can see
my sisters
visions. And it was magnetic. It was really, that is the best I could say. It was truly magnetic. And we left thinking like, how do we do more of this with him? And that was really what we asked, like pretty shortly thereafter, like,
how do we do this?
We definitely had a connection, I think, initially. And I'm usually, I'm from Dallas and there isn't a lot of
slower to warm up, slower to rev up. It's like a good diesel,
things are not as...
you're going.
Yeah. She's
so,
like,
I was just totally enjoying the whole vibe of Asheville and how different and unique it was, and meeting Sarah and then meeting Zane, shortly after we had just moved to the commercial kitchen. And the reason why we got connected is because, before we were going to the natural food store and getting reverse osmosis out of 5-gallon jugs to make it. And once we moved to the shared use commercial kitchen and started making more, we're like, okay, we cannot keep this up. So we got to find another supply of good water that we felt really, really good about. So we started using Blue Moon water. And it was an interesting connection. The lady that connected us, we ended up not really vibing with, and we thought that meant that we couldn't work with Zane since she's who had introduced us. So we were very, very distraught about that. But then when Zane reached out and says, hey, like, she doesn't own my time. We can still work together. We're like, yes. So
that's how I feel about Zane too. I love working with him. And so Buchi is a unique brand, and because you made a decision early on, first of all, not to have, a panoply of flavors. You were very specific and intentional with your flavor profile. And then secondarily, you also made the decision not to pursue a national presence. So I'd love to hear you share just some of the thought process behind those decisions.
It's so funny because, when we thought about the brand, it was really like it came together from a lot of different thoughts, even, individuals who aren't on this call, like Nathan, who is Sarah's parental partner and now former ex-partner, and Jeff, who still is with the business, and affectionately, we're known as the papas, and there's the mamas. And so, a lot of folks who have provided nurturing along the way, they, definitely kind of contributed to it. I remember sitting down and talking about, well, I think we should, really focus on and do these things. And Janine was like, we should keep it local. And this is how it is. And then we started to roll it out, and selling kombucha in the Southeast is like a whole new frontier. It's like space. At that time.
Nobody knew what it was.
No.
Asheville's a little bubble, but beyond like the 10% of Ashevilleans that were like way into it, like you're just constantly explaining what it was and why it was good. And it was
education.
And we were like, we were wide-eyed, and we're like, we'll only sell it local. And then we're like, well, actually, we can't pay all the bills with that, so we have to go a little bit further. And then I remember, and we're from 150 to 350 mile radius of where we lived, and then it went to East Coast. Like who?
And then it went to the Rocky Mountains.
And then went to the Rocky and came back. And it's. I think the thing, and Sarah can always talk, she says about this all the time in all the interviews that we've done over these past 16 plus years, is we never grew the brand like a CPG professionalized kind of company. We always grew where we were asked and called to be. And we were always invited to the table. And that's how we grew. Like, we did not intentionally put it in a position where we would have to make choices that would allow us to negotiate our independence,
Mhm.
or, you know, put us in a position where we had to take money because we couldn't make, you know, payroll. And so I think it was less about creating something that you can sell, as it was an extension of how we were trying to create life together and create a way that that life could be supported by utilizing an apparatus like capitalism. So I think the way we entered it was just really different. And I don't know if that really answered your question, but it wasn't really like we're only going to be available here. We were open to being where the brand led us, and we listened to that. And because of that, we've been able to keep a small core of the business through the brand in our area. But, you know, we had bigger aspirations above that too. So, you know, it's been an interesting, like, I feel like it's been organic. What would you say, Sarah or Janine? I mean,
I was just going to add that, you know, if we had focused on being a national brand and one of the top national brands, we would have had to sell a majority of the company to be able to do that, to support that kind of launch and be successful in that. We just weren't ready to do that because we knew that would be giving up, you know, the thing that made us want to start it to begin with, and give up, you know, the impact that we wanted to have down the road. So we kind of, you know, although that wasn't out of the question from the beginning, as we got closer to like knowing that to be really competitive, you'd have to go far and wide and be really cost competitive and do all the free fills and all the things that requires, that we couldn't have done that with the resources that we had ourselves. So we'd had to bring in a partner and therefore lose kind of control. And so that's really the reason why we kind of pulled back to a smaller area and be like, this is what we're going to stick with for now as far as Buchi goes.
Yeah.
And then there was an opportunity though to create to leverage the information, the technology that you created in order to support a lot of other types of brands. And this is that evolution into FedUp Foods. Because I think this is a really important message, especially for people who are new to starting their own kombucha brands and thinking like, oh, I have to be in, you know, thousands of stores. I have to be in all these regions, not realizing that there is a huge opportunity to fail when you go this sort of route that you assume is what everyone's supposed to do. So I really love how Buchi's been able to adhere to your ethics. You're a benefit corporation. You really put your values first. And I think that's a wonderful model for other people. However, I also wonder, could you have done it just with Buchi alone, or did it also need you to take this information and technology and expand it into other fermented foods and drinks, private label, et cetera? So what has that journey been like?
Ooh, well, I'll take the first couple minutes, first shot at it, and then I know Janine and Sarah will have plenty to add. I really feel like our journey has been serendipitous in a lot of ways, and it allowed us to get really clear about what energized us as a group and what energized us as the people where we live. I mean, you know, we live in the mountains, right? We live in the mountains of Western Carolina. It's such a unique place in this country, from the local stories that are sold, that are, you know, shared through song, to ideas and practices that are still happening, that have been happening here for hundreds and hundreds of years, from indigenous all the way through to where we are now. And so it's a making place. People are makers here, and they just don't make one kind of thing, right? You know, they're a carpenter, they're a seamstress, they're in all of these areas. And I think that's part of for lack of a better word, it's part of the fabric of the area. And so we got really clear about making and really listened to what that had to say. And because of that, I feel like we were guided in a way where we're more inclined to collaborate versus compete. It didn't really feel good. I mean, at that time, Sarah and I were road warriors. And we did our big sleep on your floor kombucha tour. That was a nice one. We couldn't afford a hotel room.
I remember meeting up with you guys in Chicago, and the whole room just packed with people.
The whole room, babe.
Yeah.
That's what it was. And it was, you know, when we were kind of in that space, we started to look at all the brands that were on the shelf, and we were like, we don't really want to compete with the other brands. Just add another shelf of kombucha. Like, add more fermented functional, you have an entire aisle of a massive store of soda product.
Right.
And we were just like, it's so disproportionate, so we always wanted to bring all of our kombucha brands with us when we were in there, and we have always kind of played with other brands in that way. We weren't in the take theirs off and put ours on. And you mentioned FedUp Foods. We were the first group to actually have a merger in our kombucha space, and I think the only one still to this day. And so when we decided to not operate in a place of fear, really lean into what we do well, which was make kombucha, we found that collaboration allows you to make more and be stronger together. It gave us a way to really look at food access, because really our goal the whole time when we started is, how do we get better tasting, better for you, more nutrient dense foods to more people, period. How do we do that? And Buchi was one of those vehicles, and she's cute and she's fabulous and she's, she's funky. She's got her own thing. She reaches some people, but some people don't want to ride with her, right? They're just like, this is just kind of a kooky brand. And that's okay. And so we said, how do we take what we do really well, the making of it? I think we have, if not the best, one of the best on this planet around the process of making kombucha and fermented beverages. We have just spent so much time of our lives and money and not, doing other things with it other than really just trying to get our brew really, really solid. And because of that, we're like, we need to be able to make product that everyone can access. It's really great to explore Whole Foods and enjoy all the fabulous brands that are there, but what does it mean for somebody that doesn't have that in their community? What does it mean for someone who's shopping, at a store that has more discount items than premium items? Like, could we show up in a way that created more food access for more people? And as Sarah used to say, we bring in, we go in and light the fuse and then run, and then we let all the probiotics and the bacteria do the work for us, because then they're like, I had this thing, I wasn't sure about it, but now I like it and I want more. And so we just believe that was there. And what did I miss? I know I missed a ton in that, Sarah or Janine. I'm sure I did some ingredients. But
I think you hit it. The question was really geared toward making that, away from the brand, but into a broader array of ways to get our product out there and into other areas, not just kombucha, but, water kefir and things like that. So, and I think, that was, we had to really think about it. We started and didn't really know where we were going when we started the brand, and it kind of evolved. And when we got to that point, and we're like, okay, there's lots of other kombucha brands out there. We either have to go to a point of really investing and taking outside money to really push the brand to a national placement, or there's this other way where we can, grow more organically and not have to take a big investment, but still continue to support our values of getting these lovely microbes that are good for people's bodies out in more places. So it was really, once we really thought about it, it was like an obvious choice.
Yeah. And we like to say sometimes, Hannah, we're not fussy for form. I know I say that a lot. We're not fussy for form. It's okay. We can be in a different format, because in the end, when you're made with a lot of thoughtfulness and good intention, and you are attempting to, it's a process, right? Will never be an ideal. We have so many blind spots still within our organization and with us as people. But if we just attempt to wake up every day, put our best foot forward, and continue to be in that kind of mindset where what we're making actually is not about our brand that we hold close. It's also about this thing called kombucha or fermented beverages that really does something different to your body. And like, everyone should be able to have access to that no matter where you are. And it should be of a really high quality.
1000% agree. And I think one of the ways in which you have demonstrated a lot of leadership around community and community building, of course, is by being founding members of KBI. And Zane has been on the board since the beginning and now is the chairman of the board. So, and it was, I believe, KBI that created the opportunity for you to then collaborate with some of these other folks. So just share a little bit about that KBI experience, if you will. And that's Kombucha Brewers International, for those not knowing the abbreviation.
Well, at different points. So Janine, you could share about our first trip there, which was fun.
Yeah, it was wide opening. I think, way back, I think initially in 2010, I can't remember when was KBI formed. It was in
2014.
2014. And I think it was in 2010 when we had the Great Kombucha Crisis that were like, we need, a trade group, that we can get together and share ideas and kind of be a force in the world to support this lovely thing, kombucha, in the market. And, I think Hannah is immediately who came to our mind because we had already had multiple contacts. I think you were already deep into kombucha and interviewing all the different companies. And so that was, it took some time after. I think that was the realization that we really, really did need to come together. And so, yeah, that first meeting was really incredible because you heard of all these brands. You didn't know the faces behind them. You didn't know what they were really excited about, beyond kombucha or what, it was just an eye-opening experience. And that is where we met Dre for the first time and immediately had a connection with him with Capital Kombucha. And then that evolved into, us joining our teams and really had a big part into where we are today. So that was just a very concrete example of what KBI, I think, has done for us, our two companies.
Yeah. And I would say to add to what Janine pointed out is like, you get to understand that it's just a bunch of people who really liked brewing things. And then there's some people who found it as an opportunity to make money. There are some folks who really were attempting to alchemize this idea of like, how do I live in a way that's in alignment with my values? And then also have something support that, like, how do I have a livelihood? So there was this really beautiful cacophony of people's stories, ideas, and thoughts that came together in that first meeting. And then the businesses that have come, after that. And, a lot of the old school crew have transitioned out of the industry. They're doing other things. There are a few of us left in it. And it's really fascinating to see how that continues to grow and collaborate. I mean, I talked to GT Dave just, a few weeks ago, and it was around an issue regarding, sometimes in a growth space, we have folks who want to leverage and take advantage of that on, especially those that work in the reality of the law, where we've got folks who are attorneys and there's a whole apparatus to go after companies for things. And we were talking about, some things that were happening to some of the brands, and we were able to actually trade a lot of notes on, look, I know that you're going to do this, but really take this track. Like, I've been here, this is what I did, in terms of like shared stories of ways to kind of navigate a pretty tricky world. Fermentation is a new frontier for humans, and sometimes it causes a lot of fear. And in that fearful space, some decisions aren't always the best and regenerative, but our goal is, I always feel like, is to understand that tension and move us towards understanding and awareness. And so it was good to have that conversation. If we did not meet through the KBI kind of connection, that wouldn't have been available to us. And as a result, probably saved us a lot of money because, by nature, we're going to stand in our truth and we will share that vigorously. And sometimes it's much easier to allow people to come to their own decisions while you continue to do what you need to do. So it was a good coming together there. And I really feel like that's part of what KBI has been. It's almost been like this. In fact, Janine and I were talking about this earlier. It's almost like a insurance policy that is there when you need it, to have not just someone do something for you, but to have an open line of communication within that you can connect on. And I think that's a really powerful thing to do in any industry.
Well, and you're not wrong. I mean, the reason we came together, like Janine said, was that, alcohol crisis in 2010, where there's just a misunderstanding about the trace amounts of alcohol in kombucha being a preservative, with this country having, changed our constitution to outlaw all alcohol due to Christian temperance movement. And, of course, that means our laws are going to be a little more strict than they are in our cultural counterparts. And that said, like you're saying, in lieu of regulation, there's litigation. And we've been working on trying to get regulation updated and changed. And it's an expensive, challenging, makes no sense, requires a lot of diligent efforts again and again and again, requires, even when you're being told yes, and you have to stare down that and see yet again your opportunity to come, and you just got to get up and keep at it. But I think you're right. KBI has really created literally a SCOBY, a scaffolding, a network, if you will, for all of us who share these challenges to be able to come together and trade information. And, more than an insurance policy, I think it allows that free exchange of information that's really crucial, especially amongst competitors, because a lot of times people will want to hide and want to not share information, when at the end of the day, our goal is just to get more kombucha on the shelves as opposed to, only one type of kombucha. So I've absolutely loved all of the ways in which Buchi has shown up and participated for our industry. And I know we're running out of time here, but I wanted to ask, what is your kombucha crush? Which flavor of Buchi is the one that you just can't help but reach for every single time, almost every single time, even though, of course, you love all of them? Which one is your Buchi kombucha crush?
How do you pick one child?
I
love
know.
the most?
It's really hard.
God, I don't know. Sovereign, Fire, Avonlea. I don't know that I don't know if I can pick one. I've actually been drinking a lot of our tepache lately. So we jump around.
Yeah.
We jump around.
You want to go to all the time. You want to bury it. So that's what I find.
Yeah, let's see. So Sarah's in the tepache zone. I really have been in our wild pop zone. It's been such a wonderful process to utilize the Tepicos and to reframe it in a way where people get excited about it. They're reaching for it instead of a soda. I've been digging, loving the wild strawberry cream, which is really good. And I can't wait until we can bring some other flavors out. But the strawberry has been one that I've been really digging. The root beer is good too. It's good too. It's great with pizza. But the wild strawberry, I've been crushing on that a little bit lately.
Well, and I would say, what's the water one?
Oh, Buchi water. So that is, that was the one that was our elderberry. Yeah.
Blueberry coconut water.
That was my favorite, was the water. I don't know.
Love the water too.
But,
Yep.
But I know people love the fire. And of course, you also had a root beer like one, your Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We had Earth, may it rest in peace.
Yes, we're not making that one now. It's in our archives for the moment, but we definitely had people that were but that was like one that people absolutely loved, and that was theirs. And a lot of people was like, no, it's not for them. So
Yeah, totally. But Sovereign was also really good. That peach was just so juicy and yummy. Oh my gosh.
It's still, Buchi Sovereign is still one of the top.
If I had to pick one, it would be that one, I guess.
Would be Sovereign. Yeah.
It was the first one out of Sarah's mouth.
It's a tough between that and Fire, but if I could only have one forever, it'd probably be Sovereign.
Yeah. That's good.
Well, it has been so much fun hanging out with you guys. I don't know if you have any last thoughts to share here on World Kombucha Day, but I've loved our journey together. And as I tell everyone at KombuchaCon, look around the room. These are your friends forever. If you choose this, if this is the life you want to have. And I'm so grateful to call all of you my friends and to be continuing this kombucha journey together.
Kombucha in my mind is such a great rocket ship to get us into this whole concept of eating better, more nutrient dense foods based on fermentation. Like the curiosities that tinkle our eyes and our taste buds literally is something we get to play with every day. And so I'm excited for the future of where it is beyond kombucha, Tepicos, you name it, all the things that are starting to arrive in a way where people just get to actually use food as medicine, use food to actually fuel their abundance in their journey. And so, I'm so blessed to be around my two sisters as we build our lives together and continue to be. It's been such a rich and fulfilling thing that I don't know where I would be if we did not do what we've done. So it's a great tribute to that.
Me neither.
No.
I'd say just remember, rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes.
That's how we've grown this business. That's how we've supported each other. And that's how we see kombucha and fermentation in general. The more we can educate and work together and collaborate, the more abundance there is for everyone involved.
Yep. And so appreciate your leadership over the years, Hannah, and your excitement for kombucha and spreading the word. You know, it's just been wonderful. I can imagine, you know, where, you know, would KBI exist without your, you know, leadership and excitement and, you know, just spreading the lovely word of kombucha and all the good things that it does for us. So
thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, I love the love, the kombucha love. But yeah, it really is. It's an energy. It's an excitement. I feel like this Pluto in Aquarius is just going to blast kombucha out because she's been on the fringes and she's making her way mainstream. And I think we're going to see a huge push towards this because, as Zane has been saying, fermentation is the thing that human beings grew, you know, evolved with.
yes.
Forgot about thanks to the processed, ultra processed foods revolution. And now we're having this revival and it's so exciting to be bringing it back to people. And, you know, there's a kombucha for everyone. I sincerely believe that. That's why we put a code of practice in place so that we could enshrine fermentation and what kombucha really stands for. I know there's a lot of purists out there and I get it. And we need everybody drinking kombucha, not just, you know, us sourheads who love a little punch in the mouth from those tasty ferments. So
Exactly.
So I love that you guys are making all these great beverages, that you're helping to get quality probiotics, fermented foods into people, no matter what the wrapper says on the outside. You guys are doing the quality and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much for your time today and happy World Kombucha Day.
Happy World Kombucha Day.
Happy World Kombucha Day.
Happy World
Thanks,
Kombucha
Hannah.
Day.